Day 13. The day starts out as a continuation of where the party left off, waiting for the thunderstorm after Lanakar's funeral to dissipate. Enter Linnea Lyrandoff, cloistered cleric of Orion, found lost and wandering aimlessly in the swamp, utterly drenched except for her books. Linnea performs an invaluable service for them. She identifies the remains of the loot they got from the Razor Fiends. This included a greater crystal of aquatic action, Eyes of the Eagle, Third Eye Freedom, and a Rod of Silence. The party formulates their plan. 1. Purchase potions of water breathing from Ilion. These potions last 12 hours. 2. Paddle up the stream to the rim of the wrist sinkhole. 3. Drink the potions and walk across the stream bed. The crystal of aquatic action obviates Holden's need for water breathing, and Lovin doesn't breathe, so the party gets to save on potions. 4. Take the bell tower first, then investigate the town hall. The party borrows a boat from the elves and paddles up the stream. Close to the sinkhole, they're ambushed by a black scale and 4 poison dusk lizard folk. The black scale is spotted lurking underwater, but instead of surfacing as they had expected, it easily capsizes the boat and dunks everyone into the drink. The party is lucky that the stream is only 4 feet deep and that their shorter party members don't have problems with breathing water. The lizard folk are quickly overwhelmed. Linnea takes a poisoned arrow, but her strength isn't damaged much, while Holden takes a sound bashing from the black scale. He easily drops the black scale after applying Divine Surge to the beast's crotch. Laika, the shifter, is able to use her jump to leap through the nasty undergrowth to grapple one of the poison dusks, while Lovin and Linnea apply some liberal fire from their soggy positions to take out 2 of the other snipers. Kikini freezes the last sniper with energy ball. Overkill, but it gets the job done. They attempt to interrogate the remaining lizard folk, again, but it only tells them the party stumbled through their territory. They dump him there. Kikini and Holden begin to argue about leaving him alive, while Lovin just walks over to him and shanks the lizardman. They begin moving towards the tower. Memorable lines. Laika, to Holden, look, sir, it is a large heathen. Laika, to Holden, look, sir, it is a miniature heathen. Laika, to Holden, sir, it appears you have water in your eyes. Traveling to the tower underwater, the party enters the submerged floor of the tower. Lovin sneaks up into the second floor to scout and spots 3 of the hobgoblins inside. The party decides to have him plant the exploding spike at the top of the stairs. Lovin plants it in and splashes loudly into the water. The hobgoblins investigate the sound, and the spike goes off. All of them are burnt within an inch of their life, but they draw their swords anyway. Laika runs up to skewer one of them, but misses both. Kikini comes in and wastes them all with energy missile. As they come up, though, they see someone running up the stairs and give chase. Laika is the first to arrive on the top floor. Corculin the Blade Bearer, now a Warblade 4/Fighter 2, confronts her, while the other hobgoblins drop their bows and draw their swords. Corculin is initially able to counter Laika's strike with Wall of Blades, but when Lovin tumbles past him, his advantage quickly turns. Holden runs up the stairs and uses an action point to jump from one of the lower steps onto the top floor, over the railing, and joins the battle. However, one of the hobgoblins begins ringing the bell. Kikini joins the fray with an energy missile, nailing all 4 hobgoblins. 2 of them die, while Corculin and the last veteran are able to stand a little while longer before Laika cuts them down. However, the party spots lizard folk beginning to get into their rafts to paddle toward the tower. Crack ensues. Holden hoists up one of the guard corpses and begins waving its arms so that it appeared to be waving at the lizard folk. In a loud goblin voice, he can speak the language. He tells the lizard folk to leave, that it was a false alarm. And he rolls really well on his bluff, and it was too ridiculous to not let slide, so the lizard folk begin paddling away. The PCs then go down and search the bunks, and discover Corculin's potions of fly. They re-emerge onto the lookout deck to spot the ogres on the town hall roof beginning to stir. One of the ogres jumps down into Regerix's lair. Within a few seconds, the ogre climbs back out, and so does Regerix. The PCs quaff their potions. Holden, Lovin, and Laika are able to fly. Linnea inherited a potion of fly from Ashy as well, so she drinks but decides to stay in the tower. Holden says, "We're like flies guarding a piece of Sarvith," astride Regerix, wing angrily toward the tower. Kikini begins a devastating barrage of energy balls. I roll horribly on their saves. By the time Sarvith and Regerix close to breath weapon range, Regerix is down to 105/152 HP. Sarvith is down to less than half. He started with a beefed 62 HP. This is despite me giving them action points and despite Kikini's player rolling badly. Regerix lets loose a breath weapon but only hits Holden. Despite Holden's failure to save, I roll badly and Holden only takes around 20 damage. Holden and Leica charge. Holden scores massive hits, while Leica fumbles one of her 2 weapon pounce attacks. The dragon retaliates with a full attack. Bad idea, I should have remembered the dragon was supposed to keep his distance, and rolls a mass of 1s and 2s. Not a single attack hits. Holden and Leica flank the dragon and combo him with Soaring Raptor Strike and Bone Crusher. At this point, the dragon is down to 32 HP. Kikini softens it up even more by detonating an energy ball behind Regerix, bringing the dragon down to 19 HP. I should have wised up and had them run away, but no. The dragon flies upward and dives toward the tower. Sarvath uses his Arrow Storm but only hits Kikini for damage that is pretty much irrelevant at this point. I should have used Hunter's Mercy on her instead. Kikini simply blasts the dragon and rider with Energy Cone. Sarvath is already at -2 at this point, and he slumps back in the saddle. The dragon is down to 7 HP. Enter Linnea. Blast of Force. 8 damage. Regerix rolls a 1 on his fort save, and falls out of the sky. The fall, even into the water, kills both Sarvath and Regerix. The regular ogres on the hall's roof hightail it when they see Regerix fall out of the sky. The 2 remaining Skull Crushers stay put and hurl some boulders ineffectually at the flying PCs as they close in. Kikini blasts them once more, and Leica and Holden quickly cut down the 2 ogres once they clear the space. The PCs investigate the ruined building off the side and find the Razor Fiend waiting. It breathes acid on Leica and Holden, but they cut it down quickly before its next turn, and Linnea finishes it off with a Scorching Ray. The PCs hear the loud hooting of Nurklenake's Edin as it comes onto the roof. Nurklenake, wielding a rapier, emerges with them. This battle gets silly quickly. Nurklenake rolls high on initiative and raises a solid fog. Leica and Kikini get trapped in it. The other PCs are unable to get in good shots due to the fog, and Nurklenake quickly raises a greater invisibility to attempt to escape. Linnea is able to dispel the fog after Kikini and Leica extricate themselves, while Holden flies up out of the hatchery to drop down on the Edin. The 2 beatsticks attack the Edin and damage it quickly. Still invisible, Nurklenake blasts Leica and Holden, and the Edin, with confusion. Leica makes her save, but Holden remains floating in the air, babbling like a moron. Lovin snipes the Edin, which rolls attack nearest enemies in its confusion and hits the 2 beatsticks before collapsing from Lovin's bleed damage. Kikini climbs onto the roof and tries to find Nurklenake with Leica. Kikini tries to hasten the process by randomly choosing a spot to grease. And dumb luck strikes. She catches Nurklenake in the area, and he fails his save, falling flat onto the ground, cursing loudly. Leica tries to close in on the grease spot and chooses one of the squares to attack, but she doesn't pick the right square. Nurklenake begins crawling toward the stairs leading down to the boardwalk. Linnea summons a Hound Archon and orders him to hunt down the hobgoblin by using Detect Evil. Kikini fires an energy bolt through the spot where she thought the Beguiler was, but Nurklenake was no longer there by the time she does so. The Beguiler creates a major image trying to climb over the rampart and jumping down onto the boardwalk below. Immediately the PCs give chase. Holden rolls, babble incoherently, for 3 rounds. The Hound Archon is first. It slashes at the image with its great sword, destroying it. Using its scent, the Hound Archon picks up the Beguiler's trail, and Kikini greases the boardwalk to prevent Nurklenake from escaping toward the hatchery. With Leica groping around blind, swinging her sword as if at a piñata, Holden drifting lazily through the air babbling, Kikini down to the last of her power points and Nurklenake nowhere to be found, I ask them if they want to give up looking for him. The players yell no, in unison. The Beguiler tries to escape into the water, but his own invisibility gives him away. The PCs see the bubble in the water. Holden rolls, flee from Caster at top speed, and ends up hovering over the water, way out toward the southwest. Kikini uses the last of her power points to fire an energy missile at the Beguiler, but misses. I rule that the mischance still applies since the spell is aimed at creatures, not spaces. The Beguiler dismisses his invisibility and surrenders as the Hound Archon brings him down on his knees. The party ties him up for interrogation later and drags him into the hall while they explore. They find everything they need to find: Ulwise letter, Regerix's hoard, and most importantly, the Ghost Lord's phylactery. Linnea is able to provide the necessary information regarding the phylactery. It was most definitely a Lich's phylactery, and the letter gave his identity away. Linnea's history check recalls that the Ghost Lord was once Uriel Zarl, a hobgoblin druid who fought alongside the Gatekeeper sect against the Dakir invasion of Eberron more than 5,000 years ago. After successfully slaying the Dakir who took over Rist, Zarl left, but after about 200 years a pride of ghostly lions ransacked Rist, and an unnatural quake collapsed Rist into the sinkhole that it is now. The creator of the phylactery is not an arcane caster but a druid, and a blighter at that. Kikini also points out the Ghost Lord's lair on Koth's map. This might be the source of party conflict. Holden and Leica want to destroy the phylactery and slay the Ghost Lord, while the others are sure there might be a reason why the goblins have it. Holden balks at the thought of trading the Lich his phylactery for aid, but Kikini says we don't necessarily have to ally ourselves with him. Session 9, An Alliance and an Assassination. After raiding the Dragon's Hoard and finding the important plot-relevant items in the Rist Town Hall, the PCs figure out what to do with Nurklenake. They plan to tie him to the side of the boat partially immersed in the water, among other grave threats and such. They even laughed at the irony of finding his torture implements inside his haversack. However, at this point things don't go as they've planned and go surprisingly well according to my plan. Using his telepathy, Nurklenake sends messages to the PCs' heads in Dakir. None of them know the language, but the term Dakir is used. Nurklenake himself acts shocked and horrified, and begins looking around him in horror. Lovin quickly rips off the gag while holding his rapier sharply against the beguiler's throat. They still don't know that he is one, and demanding what was going on. You fools, it's the Dakir. Don't you know the history of this place? It's tainted. All this while, the same line keeps repeating in the heads of the PCs. Fothgen Rathkil Quirifalitral K Dakir. Fothgen Rathkil Quirifalitral K Dakir. Fothgen Rathkil Quirifalitral K Dakir. Using Silent Spell, Nurklenake casts Blur on himself, the only spell he can cast, and feigns a seizure. Everyone does their best to try to figure out what's going on, but without any spell components to identify the spell with, Linnea couldn't really tell whether he had cast a spell or not. Thoroughly spooked, they decide to quickly get the hell out of there and drag Nurklenake behind them. When they get onto the roof, they realize they're surrounded. 4 black-scale lizard folk stand on the roof. These guys are enormous. 3 of them are carrying tree-sized great clubs, while the 4th has the telltale horns and wings of a half-dragon. Nurklenake secretly sends telepathic messages to the black scales, telling them to run quickly and inform the Red Hand, and they will be rewarded. Despite their dim wits, they respect Nurklenake as a herald of Regerix and fight a little longer only to escape. The half-dragon is the most intelligent and fastest, and as such is an ideal messenger, but Nurklenake broadcasts it to them just in case. Once on the roof, Kikini begins to use her backup Dorhi of Energy Ray as she is out of PP. Holden, however, quickly takes out the winged half-dragon via a lucky divine surge. The beast falls to the ground and almost pins him, but he successfully gets out of the way. One of the remaining black scales grabs Nurklenake from Holden, tucks him under his shoulder, and leaps into the water. The others do likewise, scattering in different directions. Leica manages an amazing leap onto the back of the black scale holding Nurklenake and proceeds to hack at him, while the flying Holden pursues. Linnea plants an ice knife in the black scale's back, but it keeps on paddling. The 2 other black scales escape unmolested. Eventually Linnea uses her rod of viscid globs on the black scale, and Leica shanks it dead. With the black scales gone, their escape from the accursed ruins is going to be easier. More importantly, Nurklenake is alive. Still frothing and blurred, but alive. They decide to paddle back to where they left the boat, using the dead lizard as a raft. Don't look at me, I just DM here. Surprised face. Much to the shock of the elves, the PCs paddle in triumphantly, towing the corpse of an ogre-sized lizard behind them. The community gathers to welcome them, only to gape at their grisly trophy. Killier arrives and congratulates the PCs. He asks if they need to see the elders, to which they reply, yes, we need items identified. Sigh. Trellera comes in and identifies Nurklenake's gear, while Lillian easily deduces that the PCs have been had. He dispels Nurklenake's blur. Much wincing around the table. Celeria arrives and asks them what they plan on doing. We wish to interrogate our guest. The old druid says she understands their needs, but says they may not shed any blood within Star Song. Holden assents, and they bring Nurklenake into a tent for interrogation. Holden and Leica decide to use both the Candle of Truth and the Elixir of Truth for redundancy. Nurgle fails his save against the Candle. Despite the Zone of Truth's effects, Nurgle is able to remain dodgy. He knows how these effects work, and as such only answers yes/no questions. He also replies with questions, making it harder for the PCs to get any info out. Here's how the interrogation played out. What is the Red Hand's strategy? And what kind of strategy do we need against an army of farmers, farriers, and stable boys? What are the Red Hand's plans? And you have the map. You tell me. Irrelevant. I asked you a question. And I don't know. Any specifics? What was the Red Hand's purpose in Rist? And you saw the hatchery, didn't you? We were breeding greenspawn razor fiends for use as shock troops. How many are your forces? And shrug. I want a number. And I don't know the exact numbers. Are there other spellcasters like you? And yes. What platoon or organization do you belong? And I am a member of the Kulkerzul, the elite spellcasting brigade. What do they specialize in? And I'm sure you would consider any spellcasting special, Mr. Mundane Dwarf. Annoyed I was asking what kinds of sorcery the others could do. And various kinds. How many casters are there? And I'm not sure. I've been stationed here for a while. Not many survive our training. How many do you know survived? And about 2 dozen. How do you intend to deal with Brindal? And how does any large army deal with a fortified city? So you're planning on laying siege to it? And shrug. What about the dragons? How many dragons serve? Kikini interrupts Holden. Dragons serve no one. Fine, how many dragons fight with the Horde? And 1. What type? And red. Name? And Abathriax. How old? And I am not well versed enough in draconic lore to know. Who is in command of the Horde? And Wormlord Hravek Karn. Who are his direct subordinates? And it wouldn't matter anyway, would it? 2 of them are dead. Who is still alive? And Wormlord Ulwy. Where is Ulwy stationed? And I don't know. Who reports to Ulwy? And the Wormlords are assigned specific tasks, and typically don't directly command the armies. Why does the Red Hand have the Ghost Lord's phylactery? And what is every Lich's greatest fear? What is your relationship with the Ghost Lord? And Lich's never make friends with anyone. What are you asking him to do? And I don't know. Ask Ulwy. Where is the Ghost Lord's lair? And ask Ulwy. Trying to intimidate, you're lucky we aren't allowed to spill your blood here. Tell me what you know. And laughs and grins, I know how these things go. This was my job in the Red Hand. I know all about interrogation and torture. You're doing it wrong, and your precious principles are holding you back. Presently, Killier enters and asks them how things are going. They reply that they haven't been getting much, and feel they're about done. They escort Nurgle off the grounds, asking Killier to keep the archers' bows trained on the hobgoblin as they leave the community. Lovin begins to turn into a cyborg Belcar as he says, I don't like killing. But I can kill in the name of the greater good. And you know what? He glowers as he pushes his rapier against the hobgoblin's throat. This is the greater good. Stab Biddy. At this point, the pizza arrives and we break for lunch. The group purchases some sacks to carry the cash from Regerix's horde, and spend the first half of the day doing this. They then return to a banquet in celebration of their feats, and Celeria tables the alliance dialogue. One by one, the elves state their cases. Killier is not convinced the Red Hand directly threatens them, thinks dividing their military to help the humans is a bad idea. Trellera wants vengeance for her brother, but is not too confident of her opinion as she is the youngest of the elders. She also thinks that acting out of passion may be a bad idea. Ilian wishes to help Linnea, a fellow sovereign host cleric, though Ilian is a cleric of Balinur and Linnea is a cleric of Orion, but does not want to put Starsong's leaders into a situation where they are cut off from Starsong itself in the event that the Red Hand lays siege to Brindal. Celeria, as the oldest of the elves, she remembers the ancient wars fought between the humans, and she knows all of the last war's history. She is not convinced the humans are trustworthy enough, and while she is aware that war devastates her beloved nature, she knows its destruction need not come if she can avoid it. The players break into a very long and well RPED discussion among themselves, excusing themselves while they put together their case. Holden, being the party face, leads the discussion. Holden admits all four of them have good cases and wants to concentrate on convincing Killier. He thinks that Starsong's military need not be divided, as all of them could march to Brindal and take all the people with them. Kikini and Leica react, saying that bringing even more refugees to the likely overburdened Brindal is not feasible. Holden doesn't see refugees but an army. Kikini says there are a good number of non-combatants who might be put directly into harm's way. Leica echoes this. Kikini also brings up the matter of Starsong Hill being sacred ancestral ground. It's not a plot of land to be abandoned so easily. Holden realizes this and begins formulating other suggestions. The proximity of Rist to Starsong Hill suggests that it is likely that once the Razorfiend army was completed, Starsong Hill would have been used as a testing ground. The leaders of Starsong need not go to Brindal. Kikini suggests that if the Horde is indeed able to lay siege to Brindal, then it is likely that an army able to deal with a fortified city can easily breach a grove of trees. The Red Dragon alone could smoke them out like rats by setting fire to the entire tree wall. Holden tables a substantial offer of gold to the elves. The PCs conclude that staying in Starsong Hill is not the right course of action, considering the power of the Horde. Holden makes his checks, and the others, having contributed to the discussion, make their 8 and other checks as well. Poker-faced, the elves break for their own huddle. They return, still poker-faced, and begin with their response. Alliance point tally. Killier, completely convinced. DC 31, +2 alliance points. Trellera, completely convinced. DC 23, +2 alliance points. Ilian, partially convinced. DC 32 to convince completely. +1 alliance point. Celeria, partially convinced. DC 34 to convince completely. +1 alliance point. Razorfiends slain, 3+3 AP. Wrist cleared of red hand presence, +2 AP. Generous gift of gold, +2 AP. Total, 13 AP. Impressed by their performance, the elves offer a cadre of archers to bolster Brindal. Killier and Trellera will go as well. Ilian will remain behind in Starsong to manage it while Celeria goes off to Brindal to meet with its leaders. She will then promptly return to Starsong. Ilian hands the PCs a sending stone for them to use to call on the elves, only then will they send the army and their representatives. Celeria concludes, while we elves live long lives, not many of us live to see times as dark as these. It is fortunate, however, that in these dark times we have allies as honorable as you. The players rejoice, though I tell them what they would have gotten if they had been slightly more successful, they missed out on the owls. Massive groaning. They also remember now that they had left their mounts at the edge of the swamp. They give up their mounts for dead, and figure it would be best to depart quickly. They travel the remaining half of the day and camp out in the burnt-out shell of the Rist blockade. Days 15, 16, and 17. Day 15, random weather says heat wave. They decide they would rather risk the fatigue and non-lethal damage than have the potential obliteration of Brindal on their heads. They press on and fail a lot of saves, but none of them passes out. Day 16, uneventful. Day 17, they march through the day and arrive at noon at Witch Cross, which has become a ghost town. They decide to make use of the remaining half of the day and spend time to train for teamwork benefits. Leica and Holden primarily gain the use of Crowded Charge, Massed Charge, and Leica Rock. They camp. Day 18, marked for death. Half a day's journey from Brindal, they come to a clearing in the road early in the evening and spy 2 men being tortured by a gang of hobgoblins and an ogre. Lovin is unable to see well in the gloom and can't spot whether the men are still alive. The distance makes his check worse. He slips into the woods and brings out his crossbow. They decide to throw caution to the wind and attack. It's late in the evening, so they can afford to spend all their spells and power points. Kikini launches a devastating augmented energy missile at the gang, dropping almost all of them dead in one shot. Holden and Leica close in on them rapidly. Then the excrement collides with the ventilation. Linnea and Lovin begin walking towards the woods. An enormous hobgoblin materializes, swinging a wicked-looking heavy flail. He takes 2 swings at her, smashing off about half her HP, breaking invisibility. 2 other large creatures appear, 9-foot-tall black-scaled dragon men wielding giant falchions, their eyes gleaming with cunning and wickedness. Almost immediately, Linnea is dropped to -2 HP by a critical hit. A voice enters Holden's mind, speaking to him in Goblin, saying, "Hold tightly onto the Kalashtar and it will be over quickly." Holden fails his save vs the Charm Monster, SP, and grabs Kikini. Kikini struggles against the grapple, and 2 more black spawn appear in the forest, bearing down on Lovin. Laika uses her incredible speed to reach one of the giant black spawn and cuts it down. Kikini is able to use energy missile once more, augmenting it to its maximum level, and hits the greater Barghest and 2 of the black spawn. The Barghest is damaged and responds by casting Blink on itself, while the black spawn goes down. Meanwhile, the sinister voice compels Holden to drag Kikini into the woods where the newly materialized black spawn await the slaughter. Seeing this as an opportunity, Lovin makes a break for Lina and uses a potion of cure moderate wounds on her. The cleric woozily gets up and immediately identifies the giant hobgoblin as a greater Barghest, a soul-devouring lupin fiend. Immediately another Barghest materializes right beside Kikini. The compulsion on Holden seems to let up for a bit, as the Barghest takes swings against the Psion. Kikini manages another maximized energy missile on the first Barghest, sending it shrieking back into the void. Ultimately only 1 Barghest and 1 black spawn are left. Attempting to take out the Psion once and for all, the remaining black spawn attempts to grapple Kikini and hold her down for the greater Barghest to feast on. While she manages to land an AOO on the black spawn, her non-magical staff simply bounces off his DR. Yay, DR/magic was useful for once. At this point, Kikini is down to 4 HP. Without the compulsion forcing him to act, Holden uses Rivet Strike to hit the Barghest and heal Kikini up to more comfortable levels. The Barghest dimdoors away to safety, considering the day's work done, while the remaining black spawn drags the Psion away from the party. Linnea puts a smoldering hole in its head with her wand of Scorching Ray. Shaken, but not stirred, not slain, the party heals up and rests uneasily. To the slaughter. Day 19. The party wakes up and begins to continue walking toward Brindal, which is half a day's journey away. As soon as they clear the Witchwood, they see a massive column of smoke rising in the west. Its base is periodically illuminated by flashes of blue-white light and long, slow blasts of red fire. Drellin's ferry has fallen. End of session. We started really late and only had 2 combat encounters, but this is seriously one of the best sessions I've ever dmed. The role-playing was good, and I was able to make the Red Hand troops look far more competent. Suddenly they aren't grab bags of XP anymore, they can think, they can fool the players, and have an intelligence network that makes them dangerous. Even Laika's player said she finding out we were beguiled was honestly very awesome. This session, MO, epitomizes all of the good things about RHOD. It's malleable enough to fit in any campaign setting, allows the PCs to perform their own actions while sticking to an urgent timeline. This high-risk, high-reward session really carried the feel of urgent danger and lucky saves that Eberron is all about. I was really happy with the role-playing in both the interrogation encounter and the negotiation with the elves. It was hilarious how they first thought that the burning column of smoke was Brindal. I had to explain that the smoke was coming from the direction of Drellin's ferry. The marked for death encounter happened almost exactly as I had play-tested it. My heart was pounding really hard as they fell for it, and I was honestly worried about one of them getting eaten by the Barghests. Still, they pulled through with perseverance, teamwork, and heroism. They really deserved that big chunk of XP they got from it. The PCs arrive in Brindal at noon. They pay the gate tax and enter, and meet a group of clerics of Dolar attending to a whole bunch of sick people by the roadside who are being evacuated into wagons headed for Vathirand in the east. The clerics ask the PCs for help, and they oblige. They notice Maiha, who immediately tells them that she's something of a fan and would like to join up once her arm gets better. Kikini is suspicious as she's the first to notice the unusual amount of attention she was giving them, but the rest of the PCs don't really catch on. They think she might either be a spy or a legitimately noble person, but have no reason to absolutely believe either case. Insert a hilarious exchange between Holden and Laika. Laika threatens to write to Holden's wife back in Thrain about his supposed temptation to have extramarital dalliances with Maiha, to which he violently reacts. "Tall women do not turn me on." He orders her to do push-ups and sits on her back. She simply retorts that his wife would not approve of this close contact, to which he orders her to do 50 more push-ups. In any case, the clerics order the wagon to move on ahead and also mention that Captain Sorina was looking for them. The PCs run into her soon, and she embraces the PCs she's met before. Laika and Linny introduce themselves. The cleric does not fail to mention her novels, which she offers to Sorina. The soldier actually expresses interest, while Laika warns her that the books deal with forbidden romances between hobgoblins and dwarves. And the hobgoblins sparkle too, she adds. They sparkle? I thought they just stank. She brings the PCs to Brindle Keep, where they meet with Lord Jarmoth and Captain Ulverth. The PCs introduce themselves and tell the two everything they know. The information about Abathriux is news to Jarmoth and Ulverth, but the reports of Koth's and Sarvatha's deaths help their spirits a lot. The PCs attempt some discussion regarding siege tactics, but none of this is much help at the moment considering Lady Call isn't around. One interesting idea that Holden floats is unpetrifying the Stone Wyvern, which I'd described as a Thrain air cavalry unit that had been down during the last war and petrified, so they can actually use it as a mount, for them to use as a quick means of transporting them around the battlefield when the attacks reach their climax. The PCs then mention the phylactery and ask for help regarding information about the Ghost Lord and the Thorn Waste. Jarmoth directs them to Immerstal the Red. They proceed to Immerstal and meet Alandri. She tells the PCs that Immerstal can't be bothered right now, and then changes into her Sphinx form, offering to allow them to bother Immerstal if they can cough up a riddle. Kikini makes an int check and rolls a 26, but the player didn't have anything on hand, so I let her think of one to give it another time. Immerstal comes down and haggles with them over the price of information that they can get regarding the Thorn Waste and the Ghost Lord. They refuse to pay the 400 GP it will take for an immediate rush job, so they instead let him hit the books overnight. They also make the very clever move of talking about the phylactery and then ask him to pay them 20 GP for the information. He grumpily grants them a 20 GP discount on his research fee. The PCs then return to the keep, asking more about Maiha along the way. They learn that she was a traveling sorcerer, and Lovin believes her story checks out enough to trust her. They also learn that she had blown away a guard who was making inappropriate advances at her, and broke her arm. The PCs can't agree on whether to recruit her or not, and in the end say it would be a good idea to keep her close in any case. They talk to Ulverth again about the state of the army. He tells them that while the Lion Guard is capable, the militia is pretty much a collection of maggots. Their equipment is pretty decent, but that's pretty much it. Finally, the party convinces Ulverth to loan them mounts. The PCs go rest, we have lunch. Day 20 to 26, to the Thorn Waste. Early the next morning, the PCs get their info from Immerstal. Apparently Linny's knowledge was pretty much complete, but it's Immerstal's info that points them to the actual location of the Ghost Lord's Lion 12 miles into the Thorn Waste. They also learn that the Thorn Waste is home to the Dakir-tainted wildlife that escaped the corruption and subsequent destruction of Rist. The Badlands are home to all sorts of predators, natural, undead, and aberrant. They then buy provisions for the journey and get a wagon as well. They take their horses and ride off as fast as they can. The PCs move as quickly as they can, stopping in Prosser, then Doth. The weather gets pretty nasty, but they continue anyway. Their rationale is that the visibility is just as bad for whoever is watching them anyway. Day 22, the PCs encounter a small band of hobgoblins with a dire wolf marching down the road. Easy skirmish. The PCs wipe them out easily. Kikini opens up with an energy ball that incinerates the grunts. They're surprised the dire wolf and the blade bearer survive, but Holden charges in on his horse anyway. This was a bad move. The wolf overpowers the horse and trips it, sending the dwarf sprawling onto the ground. Laika charges the blade bearer with 2 weapon pounce, but rolls 2 natural ones. Pathetic. Lovin and Linny take potshots from the wagon, but it's Kikini's energy missile that kills the dire wolf. Finally, Laika finishes off the blade bearer with death from above. Easy XP. Day 26, I swear this is random. I roll a tornado on the random weather table. Instead of blowing them away, almost did, but it didn't make any sense for a twister to appear out of the blue and blow them away. I have the storm rage on the horizon, with the twister rampaging across the prairie. A sign of things to come. The Temple of the Rotting Lion. The PCs decide not to stop at the edge of the Thorn Waste. I decide to dispense with the random encounters I rolled. It was just a bunch of demon thorn mandrakes anyway. If it had been a Hound of the Gloom or a pseudo-natural Megaraptor, I'd have gone with that. They didn't want to be caught dead sleeping in the Thorn Waste, so they decided to continue pushing towards the lion. The trip is made much easier by Laika's ranks in survival, so she pulls them through. They arrive at the lion at sunset. One by one, the ghostly lion shapes wink into vision around the monolith, and the PCs gape in awe at those for a while. Linny assures them that the vestiges aren't harmful, and that they might be bound magically to the monolith. Before they enter, A brief debate flares up over what exactly to do with the phylactery. Holden and Laika want to destroy the Ghost Lord, Lovin wants to blackmail him, Kikini doesn't want to fight him either way, and finally Linny is neutral. They still don't know what to do. The PCs see the mouth and the cavern in the lion's chest. They decide that it would be better if all of them enter together, as not everyone can make the climb up the monolith's side. And they walk straight into Varathian's lair. The Behir had smelled, spotted, and heard them way before they even entered the cavern. She is poised to strike, hanging upside down from the ceiling, 15 feet up. Everyone forgets to make spot and listen checks, which is kind of silly, as Holden and Lovin's player was continuously rolling during the journey. As such, Varanthian gets a surprise round. However, my bad luck and the player's stellar luck figure heavily in this battle. Once more Varanthian rolls a 1 on initiative. Immediately she uses her smite good with her bite, ripping a huge chunk out of Holden and grabbing him into her coils. The rest of the party decides to run, but Holden curses at Laika for even thinking of abandoning him. Using her whirling frenzy to boost her strength and squeezing out every last bit of bonus by using an action point, she jumps up and grabs Holden. And beats Varanthian's grapple check. She rolls a natural 1. I did forget to ask for a jump check, hard to beat that massive jump DC, but considering how awesome the situation was, I decided to go with Rule of Cool and let her extricate her superior officer. Kikini has nothing that can work well on the Behir at the moment, so she decides to go for broke and manifests Death Urge. Varanthian's SR is breached, and she fails her save, +5 will save on a boss. WTH. The party hightails it out of the cavern while Varanthian attacks herself. She shreds herself real badly, roaring all the time and yelling out threats to the Kalishtar. Once outside, Kikini fires an energy ball into the cavern, using electricity. The Behir crashes out of the cavern, unscathed. Lots of PPS gone right there. Lovin and Linny's attempts at hurting the Behir with wands simply bounce off her SR. Kikini resorts to energy missile due to her target being smack dab in the middle of the party, but this bounces off her SR. But the Behir grabs Linny and begins crushing the life out of her. She goes from full HP to 12 in one attack. Laika chops down the Behir to 7 HP with Soaring Raptor Strike, and Holden, in a livid rage, uses Divine Surge on the Behir. Varanthian splits apart and explodes in a huge mess out of which Linny emerges, covered in steaming black blood. The party pushes on into the lion. What would have been the most flavorful encounters in this chapter get laughed at. The first 2 ghost brute lions get slaughtered despite their incorporeal mischance. Holden smashes them into oblivion. The dire lion fares only slightly better by hitting Holden and draining away 1 point of strength. Linny turns undead and sends it fleeing. Disappointing. Long story short, Fog Cloud is awesome. The line of sight made fighting highly frustrating for everyone. Since Allwise retinue is well prepared, lots of noise from Varanthian, they're able to set up a rather effective ambush. The monks, now Monk 2/Swordsage 3, make nuisances out of themselves, although their attempts at grappling with the dragon chains fail repeatedly. The cool Kurzul War Adept is able to summon a fiendish dire wolf into the middle of the party, but Kikini is able to pull away in time. The wolf is eventually taken down by Lovin, but Laika walks straight into the monks. Despite their buffs, the mass shield of faith that Linny had cast on the party was working wonders in frustrating their attacks. The evasion that the monks had kept them alive longer than the PCs expected, but ultimately they went down thanks to the PC's persistence. The War Adept raved about taking down the PCs with him and began casting his final scintillating sphere, but he miserably failed his casting defensively concentration check, yes it can fail, and tried to run away. Holden cut him down. However, one critical boo-boo in this fight Ulwai got away. Casting haste on her party and drinking a potion of gaseous form, she was able to slip away and get her phantom steed going. The monks in the guard room escaped as well. Things aren't always in the PC's favor, and they'll have to deal with that. The PCs open the door to the Chamber of Rebirth and are immediately greeted by the sickly green glow of the pool. I replaced the lesser bone drinkers with true bone drinkers bolstered by the Ghost Lord's Corpse Crafter tree feats, and also add an advanced bone claw, also boosted with Corpse Crafter feats. The PCs only manage to spot one of the bone drinkers in the gloom. The bone claw and the second bone drinker remain hidden. Holden immediately charges toward the bone drinker he spotted, but his movement prevents him from getting close enough to attack. The bone drinker beats him handily in its full attack and grapple check. Seeing the tentacles, Laika warns her superior to guard his backside. Yelling for help, Holden calls out. Damn it, this thing's going to drink my bones. I'd be more worried about the tentacles, Laika quips. Kikini entrenches herself in the narrow corridor leading to the lion's heart, while Linnea and Laika take up positions near the pool. At this point the bone claw emerges, using its speed to squeeze easily past the lion statue and shanking Kikini from 20 feet away. The second bone drinker also emerges and begins to grapple Linny before she gets a chance to do anything offensive. Things don't go too well at first. With Holden grappled and unable to beat the bone drinker definitively, he quickly accrues a lot of con damage. He takes a total of 9 con damage across the encounter while Linny takes 3. Linny's religion checks reveal the bone drinker's resistances and the bone claw's immunity, so Kikini resorts to using electricity to attack them. Given their huge amounts of HP, however, they're able to shrug off the fire for a while. Linny, played by a substitute, attempts to blow the bone drinker grappling her away, but she fails to make the concentration check. Kikini, however, lays down a curtain of withering fire. Eventually, the bone drinkers stop moving. Eager to get back in the fight, Holden leaps up. Laika gets attacked repeatedly by the bone claw, taking lots of damage in the process despite her high AC braving the bone claw's massive reach and AOs. She tumbles toward it and executes a soaring raptor strike. It's not fatal, but it opens up an opportunity for Holden to finish it off with a bone crusher. Now if you were wondering where Lovin was, he was off to the side, missing with his bag of boulders and his wand of scorching ray. It was rather sad. The party stops a moment to rest and begins to look around the chamber. They discuss the value of the lion's heart and then look into the pool and try to figure out what to do with the dire lion within. Lovin uses a rat from his gray bag of tricks to test the effect of the liquid, and sees that the rat gets pretty much paralyzed. Thinking it would be a great morale boost to the people of Brindal, knowing how the lion was their symbol, they rescue the dire lion by pulling it out of the pool via a rope. They search around the room for a while and find the path to the Ghost Lord's chamber. The Ghost Lord stands up from his meditation to regard the PCs, his hand on the Bysht great scimitar at his waist. A twisted bugbear, tainted so thoroughly by the touch of the daycare that his body had to be bolted together with splints and metal bars, moves out of the shadows and walks up beside his master. The Ghost Lord demands the PCs explain themselves. Holden, we bring a gift, my lord. Ghost Lord, what do you have to give me? I have lost everything. I demand to see your tribute. Holden flashes phylactery. Ghost Lord, where did you get this? Kikini, we found it in a dragon's hoard when we raided a Red Hand outpost. Holden, my lord, the Red Hand has nothing more to coerce you with. Ghost Lord, and what do you want in exchange for it? Holden, we wish that you would work with us to fight the Red Hand. Party face palms. Holden, or at the very least stop aiding the Red Hand. Ghost Lord, do you think that after all these years I would serve anyone? Holden, we wish for you to withdraw your support from the Red Hand. Ghost Lord Rift. A tentacle slips out from the bugbear's side and grabs the phylactery from Holden's hand. Ghost Lord, are there any remaining hobgoblins in my lair? Kikini, they're all dead. Laika, one got away, though a gaseous form. Ghost Lord, that would be Wormlord. Oh, why I have longed to push that bitch into the pool myself, but you have rid me of her. Holden, we would be glad to fight alongside with you. Ghost Lord, you speak presumptuously, dwarf. Holden, forgive me, my lord. Ghost Lord, now get out. I will withdraw my support from the Red Hand. Go, before I change my mind. Get out. The party hastily retreats, dragging out the paralyzed dire lion after them. They get a massive XP dole out from the Ghost Lord - 4800 XP, boosting them to LV9. I redid the encounter so that it would be an L15 instead of an L13. The party camps fitfully outside the Ghost Lord's lion, since they came out in the middle of the night. Deciding it would be better than camping in the middle of the Thorn Waste, they sleep fitfully under the light of the Ghost Lord's lion spirit vestiges. The party travels for 3 days, arriving at a crossroads. They come upon a group of several ogres messing around with a wagon that has been pulled off the road. 4 of the ogres are pretty normal looking, while one of them is covered in spiked plate armor. A hobgoblin stands nearby, shouting orders, and eventually calls the attention of the ogres as it spots the party. It changes shape into an ogre mage. The party stays on their horses. Kikini and Linny share the same horse. Kikini lays down an energy ball, taking down 2 of the ogres, slightly damaging the berserker, and gravely injuring the ogre mage. The melee characters charge in on horses, and before the berserker in spiked armor is able to do anything, Linny drops a resilient sphere on it. The ogre mage goes invisible, but Kikini is able to spot it with her Nushanic True Seeing. However, the ogre mage moves above the spot where Leica is dueling one of the two remaining ogres. Instead of attacking them, though, the ogre mage instead drops darkness on Kikini, Linny and their horse. While Kikini can see through it, the horse is paralyzed in fear by the darkness and refuses to budge. I rule that it's complete darkness instead of the silly shadowy illumination, and Linny can't see the ogre mage either. Kikini responds with an energy bolt, but the ogre mage saves. Lovin, sick of being useless, decides to take a shot. He deals enough damage to drop the ogre mage to 0 HP, and he falls out of the sky to his death. Holden finishes off the other two ogres. They scavenge the bodies of the ogres for meat to force feed to the still paralyzed dire lion. They figure they don't want to restore it to working order until they can bring it to someone who can communicate with and train it. They investigate the wagon and are thankful they convinced Kikini to not shoot her initial attack straight into it. They find the bodies of the lions of Brindal as well as the letter for the shining axes, as well as the payment. Not wanting to have to carry the bodies on their cart, the PCs decide to cremate the lions and set out for Hammer First Holds immediately. Before the resilient sphere on the berserker wears off, the PCs, apart from Kikini, who didn't want to waste PP, surround the ogre and attack it as the sphere goes down. They get in several solid hits before the ogre itself flies into a rage and drives its spiked shield into Leica, chopping off more than half her HP. Then Lovin downs the ogre with a crossbow shot. The detour costs them a day, but it's well worth it. They arrive at Hammer Fist Holds and immediately get Captain Helmbreaker and his men onto the road. Helmbreaker is happy to receive the business, blows his horn and summons his brethren to kick some goblin ass, to which they respond enthusiastically. Lovin recoils in shock, because he's never seen so many Holdens, male and female, in his life. The shining axes march off with the PCs to Brindal.